All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's episode of Teen Talk Live. I am your host, Ann Dillard, and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. And I am just so excited for tonight. I know a lot of you have been waiting to have this conversation with us. Thank you for your patience. And just going to do a couple of checks right here to make sure that you are hearing me, you are seeing me. Okay. I'm so excited. All right. I think you are. Now, I know a lot of you have, if you're joining me and you can hear me and see me, just go ahead and say hello. Go ahead and say hello in the comment section. Let us know that you're here with us, okay? So I'm just gonna ask my panelists if you have the show playing, if you would silence like your phones or other device that the show might be playing on. And for the panel, for the panelists, if you can go to my page on Facebook and share this out so that your guests can join this conversation with us, right? So again, good evening and welcome to this episode of Teen Talk Live. This is an exciting episode because we are going to be talking about the mother-daughter healing. This is a mother-daughter healing panel, and we're talking about it from the perspective of the show This Is Us, the third episode, third season, 13th episode was very powerful and instrumental in the mother-daughter healing. And after we get our guests to introduce themselves, we're going to jump right into this conversation. So if you're joining us, go ahead and share this out so other people can be a part of this healing panel. All right, welcome guests. Let's start with some introductions. Tell us who you are and tell us what you do for work, how do you serve the world, and where you're coming to us from. Let's start with Gretchen.
Hi, my name is Gretchen Campbell. I am a licensed professional counselor, currently in private practice in North Carolina, and I primarily work with the child, adolescent, and millennial population with a unique niche for working with mothers and daughters.
Excellent. Welcome to the panel, Gretchen. And then we're going to go to Monisha.
Hi, I'm Monisha Washington. I am a kindergarten teacher, and I am our host's daughter.
Woohoo! All right. And Cecile, introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Cecile Edwards, and I am the creative director of Mommy Evolve, where I assist mothers in achieving better self-care and helping them find ways to bridge their gap with their parents in their parenting and with their mothers. So, yeah.
Excellent. And Renetta, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, everyone. Renetta Weaver, and I am the clinical director of a outpatient substance abuse treatment program for the military and a co-author in Unchain Me Mama, The Forgiveness Factor.
Excellent. I'm so glad you're here. And Dr. Suzanne, go ahead, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Dr. Suzanne Radigan. I'm a clinical child and family psychologist and specialize in trauma and traumatic stress and women's emotional health. And I'm coming to you from Malaysia.
Yay, welcome. So, all right, ladies, where do we start? Because we have 60 minutes to unpack this episode, right? And for a lot of us, unpacking this episode is also talking about personal parts of our lives. So let's start by just setting up the episode with Beth from This Is Us and her mother. I don't remember if we heard her mother's name. What was her mother's name?
Mama C.
Mama C. Okay, Beth and Mama C. So what had happened was so Beth's mother was on the show, and ironically I was really happy for this episode because we've been asking questions like, okay, what is her story, right? We've been seeing about her husband and his siblings, but it's like, what is her story? And then her mama came on the show, and lo and behold, we were able to see her story unfold right in front of us. Right. So let's start with Gretchen. Gretchen, I think your point about let's look at mama and how she parented, I think that's a really great place to start.
Yeah, so I think, with the dynamic of how their relationship worked and really looking at Beth and how she's functioning as an adult, that it was obvious, like once I saw Mama C in full action, that her parenting style was very authoritarian, right? And so what that looks like is a parent who really is strict as far as like limit settings, and it's my way or the highway. My way is the right way and the only way. And it really sucks the air out of the child, right? It's kind of like they have no voice. Their opinion doesn't matter. And it's really belittling, and often leads to struggles with self-esteem, being able to stand up and speak up for yourself, going after your goals, which we now realize, like Beth, like really, so all this time, like she was sitting on her gifts, right? And probably because that little girl was still trapped inside thinking like, no, I can't do that. Like, that's not for me. I went to college. I got a good job, right? We all know that. Go to college, get a good job. And so because that was instilled in her, her dreams were stuffed down. And so I think looking at the relationship from the authoritarian parenting style definitely sheds light on how Beth is functioning as an adult independently, and even also within her marriage.
Right. And if we look at that parenting style and continue to look at it a little closer, it causes the child to be afraid of you for, to some degree. Because what Beth wasn't even able to tell her mother, she's constantly seeking her mother's approval. So she wasn't even able to tell her mom that she had lost her job.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was appalling to witness when she finally had the nerve to tell her mom.
One of the questions I had was, I wondered what Mrs. Clark's original aspirations for herself was, because in the story it says that her mother was, worked hard and, had this expectation of her succeeding. And it made me wonder, like, did she have, similar, some kind of aspirations as a younger woman that was sort of suppressed so that she could please her mother? So that was a question that I had about that. And it's very likely that it was. So that was the case, because that tends to be something that carries, that happens. It's just these expectations that, others put on you that you want to satisfy. And so of course you put that on others, and that's how the cycle goes. So
I think you're right on with that, Cecile, because I'm wondering, in a lot of cases that I see, where does that obligation come from? Where, the child feels like they're obligated and they have this big debt to pay their parents. And I'll ask my daughter this, because from a daughter perspective, that obligation and the debt, and then the entitlement of the mother to say, well, I've done this for you and I've done that. So you should be able to do that. So I'm gonna go to Manisha, then I'm gonna go to Dr. Susay.
Well, I think the obligation comes from just seeking approval. We all want to make our parents proud. We all want them to see the good and see the good things, especially when there is something like sickness in the home. So she watched her dad get sick, and then mom had to take on more responsibility, so she didn't want to be an additional burden. So even when she was a child, Beth told her mom, it's okay for us to take a moment, and mom wasn't having it. So and there's no telling how many times Beth may have tried to have those moments with her mom, and then after so many, you just stop. So even into adulthood, you create that habit with her mother. That just became a staple in their relationship.
Wow, that's good. Dr. Susay?
Okay, I have so much to say. All right, so I'll try to keep it quick. First, I think she mentioned that her mother was really tough on her, and that her husband was sort of she had
I think we're losing
that
a little bit.
could be, where based on what she said, that is generational. Oh, you're losing me? I don't know why.
You're going in and
Okay.
out.
Did you? Okay. Can you hear me any better now?
Yes.
All right. I was saying that she mentioned that her husband sort of represented breathing space for her. So that led me to believe that her mother was as stringent as she was. And so her husband provided sort of a counterbalance for that. And then, so that's part A. So part B is understanding, I don't know if she's Caribbean or not, but the authoritarian parenting style is largely Caribbean. And so the idea is that you have this opportunity to live a life that we never had. And a lot of that falls on the mother's shoulders to sort of ensure that the family succeeds. And the father sort of has the space to be happy and to be free and to do a lot of the things, right? To be the provider, while mom is the disciplinarian. She sets the structure for the family. She sort of guides the family to the future. And what gets lost in all of that is the sort of compassion and empathy and softness that daughters and children often need to thrive. And so it becomes a discussion of sacrifice. Do I maintain that friendship that you want, or do I help the family to succeed?
You said a whole lot right there, because being from the Caribbean myself, being from Jamaica, I'm sure my daughter can identify some of those traits also, as you don't have to agree so readily.
I'm from the Caribbean too, so I know about it all.
because the thing is, you learn that your daughter, your children are not your friend. You have a job to do, and you have to stick to that job, and there's no room for that, that compassion or anything like that. It's like you got to be hard and fast. And looking back in hindsight, I'm like, oh my goodness, where is that soft place? Where is that compassion? Even though, and we saw this with Beth and her mom loved her out of this world, right? But with all those other clutter and all those other expectations, it seemed like the love got lost in transition.
Can
So
I
Renette, go ahead. Go ahead, Renette.
No, I was listening to what you said, and it made me think of how her dad and her had that intimate conversation where he was telling her when she was first born, or when she was an infant, she wouldn't walk, and how mom was so worried about her. And it wasn't until they played this music that she started dancing. And he said, your mom would never say this to you, but she was really, I forgot what he said. She was emotional around that situation. She was so grateful. And he was like, your mom would never say this to you, but she really cares about you. And it just goes back to your point. Like, I'm not supposed to show emotions. I just need to raise my kids, because when she said, Mom, do you know why my brothers and sisters don't come back home? It's because there's no air here. You won't let us breathe. And Mom said, I don't care if they don't come back home, because I know I did my job. I promised my mom that I will raise you all a certain way. And that's what I did. So as long as you're okay, I'm good with how, I'm good if they don't come back home. And she said, but Mom, I'm not okay.
Wow.
That's definitely what struck me, because working with women, moms, mentoring them, etc. You see how you have to assist them with unpacking this lack of self-trust, this getting back to themselves and that kind of process. And it's like, okay, where was that fostered? Where was that facilitated? Because if you observe children, we have Monisha's an educator. children don't care about what people think about them. They don't care about, the things that come out their mouth. They just simply don't have that rigidity, but at some point they lose it, right? Because they want to conform to whatever is happening. And then we grow up and we have to now get back to that original form of engaging with ourselves authentically. And so, I wonder what the balance is, because when you observe, other cultures and such, people are still high achieving without losing themselves. So why is this lost in some cultures and not in others? I guess it's a question that I had.
That's a good question. Who wants to address that? I think that's a really good question. And I have my philosophy about it, but I want to hear what the panel has to say.
Is it that thing? I'm just suggesting that maybe it's a thing where we feel like we don't have time to dream. We don't have time to get caught up in our fantasies of what we could be like. We just need to work twice as hard and twice as fast to be on a level playing field of success with other cultures. So, forget your dreams, forget all that high in the sky. Just make sure you get into this short thing so that you can be successful.
I think that's a really good point, Renetta. And I also think that part of it has to do with the historical trauma that has been passed down from generation to generation. It's like you said, we don't have time for all of that. If I want you to be better and have more than I had, and so you have to, be focused, and the only way to do that is for me to be a drill sergeant, in other words.
Mm-hmm.
That's my perspective. I'm curious to hear what other people have to say.
I think that's definitely part of it. I do feel like, though, that we miss a lot of the stories of, because, a lot of people that make history aren't necessarily people who were rigid in their thought process. They were free thinkers, right? So, Harriet Tubman is not Harriet Tubman because she decided to sit with her hands on her lap, right? She did something that no one else was willing to do. And so, I feel like that understanding and observing lives in that way, I know that, a lot of times, unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, people see their children as insurance policies, right? So, it's an insurance policy in some way, shape, or form. And so I'm not saying that children shouldn't take care of their parents. They absolutely should. But, to what end? And how do you, again, find a balance between ensuring that they are genuinely happy within themselves? I mean, we know the mental health crises that are occurring in this world, people just simply being unhappy with their lives. Where's the balance? How do we strike a better balance in raising our children to be more balanced in themselves so that they don't lose themselves in these processes?
So I think that, when thinking about Mama C, I think she did the best that she knew. And I think, each generation should attempt to do better, but I think she did the best with what she was taught, right? I think that she observed her mother, and whatever her mother instilled in her, she therefore passed that down. And you can see in Beth's interaction with her own kids on the show, she is nothing like Mama C. She is loving, she is caring, she goes hard for her babies, right? But she's very emotional. And she's very much in touch with that sensitive side, something that her mother was not. Even though I think there is little Beth still on the inside, I think that she was able to see that, like, I can't be like my mother. I don't want to continue this pattern. And so I'm going to do it different, even though I still got some own healing within myself that I need to do. But I think she did the best that she knew, Mama C, with what was, portrayed before her as far as being a mother. And it was unclear to me on whether or not she was Jamaican, or was it just the dad that was Jamaican, right? Like, because I felt like, well, if mom was Jamaican, wouldn't they have got someone who you could really tell? So I was confused on whether or not she was Jamaican or not. But it was clear that father was, and the father really provided emotional support for Beth. And I think that had he continued to live, that she probably would have been a little better than what she's, as far as her struggling with esteem and confidence and ensuring that, you know, that she can still walk in her purpose, because he provided a good balance for her. And I think a lot of families do that, right? And so it may not be such a sharp contrast as them, but I think a lot of households do that. They try to provide a balance. And so dad was real clear on how Mama C acted as a parent, acted as the mom. And I think he tried to pick up the slack where she lacked. And you could see that from like the opening scenes, when she got the phone call about being accepted into the academy, when they went to the tryouts, the dad's like, no, like, we can do it. She can go. He was all for her, supporting her and guiding her. And I think had he lived, that Beth probably would have continued on with dancing. But once dad passed, mom was like, all right, time to get a new plan. That dancing stuff is out of here. You got to make some money. So you've got to go to college, right? And get a good job, which is what she did. She went to college and she got a good job.
I think.
Okay. I want to add something here.
Yes, go ahead, Dr. Surratt, to say.
Okay. I think two pieces. The father. Yes, the father sort of support. I also understood who her husband was, in terms of the structure that he could provide for them. And I'm not saying that he didn't provide, or that, you know, she emotionally wouldn't have been okay, but I'm saying he had such a free kind of spirit that she might not have. That's just something to consider. So she.
Okay, so say I'm not hearing you real well.
Family. That could also be part of it. Internet in Malaysia is no. Anything else? Anything now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Yeah, I was saying that her mother probably understood who her husband was, and that she needed to play that role, even though that role may have come naturally to her based on her experience. That she also knew that she needed to, because someone needed to. Because her husband being maybe a little bit more free than her, there would have been no one to sort of push the children forward. So just taking an alternate perspective on why mom may have been a little bit more rigid, because nobody else would be. So that's the first thing.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna move on to Manisha to get your perspective on this, and Dr. Susay, I'll come back on. Okay, Manisha, what is your perspective on this, and talking about mom as a whether or not she was Jamaican, we can't tell, but dad was definitely Jamaican. So growing up in a Jamaican household, well, what is your perspective on that?
Well, it was already stated that the excellence factor comes through a lot stronger in, for lack of a better term, immigrant households, where you are striving for the next generation to do even better than what you did. And I think that if that was her mom's focus, she just didn't consider the rest, even though she had her own hurt from her mom, because she was able to express that her own mom was rigid. That's what she knew. And she probably felt like she turned out all right. She had her kids. She had her success. She had her husband. So if it worked for her, then it should work for her kids as well, without acknowledging the deeper damage that it may be doing.
That's a good perspective. That's a good point. And I want to acknowledge there's a question. Simone says, could it be that she chose him because he did not mirror her?
Absolutely. She said
Right?
that he gave her air. So I think that she acknowledged that that was the person that she was.
Right, right. And so, like somebody stated before, it might be a sacrificial role that she played out, right? Knowing that she had to be this hard person. And we knew that she loved and she went for her kids. She loved her kids. There wasn't no doubt about it. But how do we get that balance? Let me just pause for a minute to welcome our next panelist, Ms. Margaret Conley. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. I'm sorry I was running behind. So I
That's
am listening
okay.
to catch up, make sure I jump in at the right spot. So hello, everyone. I'm honored to sit with my colleagues on this topic. It's very dear to me.
Yes. Well, Margaret, go ahead, introduce yourself and let us know where you're coming from and what your work is, or how is this mother-daughter healing how are you connected to this?
So my name is Margaret Conley. Again, I'm an LCSW and I also have my Master's of Divinity, where I focused in the psychology of religion and pastoral care. My work centers around faith-based trauma. And this mother issue is around how personally my mother and I could not connect because she couldn't connect after trauma that had happened to both of us, that also was condoned to an extent by our faith-based community. So this connection, this healing piece is still an ongoing thing for myself. So just to see this piece between this mother and daughter was something, it was huge for me, just to even watch how the daughter did pick out pieces of life and pick out how she wanted to respond and pick out how she treated, because I do the same thing. So I identify with this daughter. And so I really, that's why it's a dear topic to me, because there was another scene from another show that I identified with too, where the mother and daughter had difficulties even speaking. And so, and that is where my mother and I lie, with the difficulty to even have conversation, because it's just too painful, the trauma that sits there. And it's not the elephant in the room. I mean, it's the dish that's on the table. So that is what this work is for me.
Thank you for sharing that, Margaret. And it's as we look at Beth and Mama C, when we look at their relationship, it's very surface. And what I find is that a lot of mothers and daughters, the relationship is very surface, and it's like, let's keep it light and keep it moving. And so what do you all think about that? Until significant healing can occur, a lot of times people keep it at the surface level. Renetta, let me hear from you.
So I was thinking about the conversation we were just having, and I was thinking that when I think about my relationship with my mom, I know she loves me and I love her too, but I think a lot of her parenting style was based on fear, protectiveness, and fear. I think I always longed for intimacy with my mom, but we just could not communicate on that level. Again, I think she was just like, let me raise my daughter and make sure she's okay, make sure she's good, successful, but all that intimacy we didn't have. So I was very close to my dad because he was more like the dad in the show, very nurturing, I felt very close to him, very intimate, where I always longed for that for my mom. And I did a lot of people pleasing throughout my life because I didn't have that acceptance or approval that I needed from her. So I found myself getting into other situations that because I was trying to get from other people what I didn't get as a child from my mom. But I think it was based on a lot of fear, and I don't know where her fear came from. And I still think to this day is based on a lot of fear. So again, like we were saying, we want to see what Mama C's background was. I'm so curious to know like how it was for my mom growing up and where that fear came from with her parenting me, because I'm the only girl, and I always felt like like all children do. I always felt like she was closer to my brothers, and they always felt like I was closer to my dad. So I know all kids probably feel that way. Like parents prefer one over the other. My mom will say, "No, that's not true. You know, I love you all the same," but it's different, and that doesn't make her. I don't want to demonize her or make it bad, but it's different, and I could feel that, but she couldn't see that or acknowledge that.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And I wonder, for the rest of the panelists, can there be healing if that awareness is not first acknowledged? If without the awareness and the acknowledgement, can there be healing? And let me say it. Dr. Susay says, right, she's typing. She said the dynamics can be painful for moms, especially when you see other moms and daughters who have that close relationship. It's a hard balancing act for moms who know the threats out there for their girls. It's like, I already knew. And I think about even me parenting my daughter, I think about different threats that I knew was out there and trying to protect her.
Yeah.
But instead, I'll let her speak to this. Instead, going about it in a different way, which I could have done differently. So Manisha, I'm gonna let you speak to that, and then I'll pick up one of the questions.
I think it goes back to parenting and fear, and I think we've talked about that before too, where instead of, for some reason in the dynamic with mothers and daughters, instead of being open and saying, you know, I experienced this and watch out for that and don't do this so that you can avoid that, then you just shut down and just try to move stealthily to protect the daughters instead of being partners in her development, is what I would think. And yeah, I think that's what it is. It goes back to the fear, and then, like I also said before, you end up revealing more by not talking than if you would have just had the conversation and developed the relationship.
Right. I think that's so key. I'm gonna listen to Cecile, and then we're gonna go to Margaret.
I just wanted to add that, you know, I love that Monisha brought that point up, because one of the things that I talked with women about is to release this fear and to build a deeper relationship with your child, with your daughter specifically. And I always think about, you know, culturally how certain things work. You know, what are the rituals that we do with our children, you know, with our daughters? How do we, you know, make a ritual out of teaching them certain things? You know, in our cultures past, we had, you know, community rituals around certain things, rites of passages, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the loss of that has constricted our ability to develop, for our children, not just to develop a relationship with us, but to develop a relationship with a larger safety net. And so that's what I thought about when you were speaking on that. And, you know, I just always encourage mothers in particular to create their own rituals for their children, for their daughters in particular, to bring them closer to them in a positive way.
Wow, that's a good point. Margaret?
And I've also found, even with my mother and I, it was more of a competition. And I won't say, it's 3 generations that I was able to be a part of my own, my mother and my grandmother. And so I found that it was always a competition between my mother and I to obtain that approval from my grandmother. And so I would encourage, just in that space of what is this disconnect, or what is this hard space between mothers and daughters, is I agree with Doctor here, who said, you know, we should create open spaces where we can communicate. And mothers shouldn't be ashamed to communicate what they have to communicate. What is your truth? What happened to you? Tell your daughters, be honest with your daughters, let them know what happened, so they won't try to go and try to prove something that never happened. They won't try to go be something that you never were. and they won't try to outdo something that never was. And so that's what I have found myself in for the better part of my young adulthood, trying to prove to my mother that I could be her and better, when some of that stuff never even existed, because we failed to communicate about what happened in the issues so that it could be a preventative measure versus a reactive piece now of healing that we have to have. And it's an ongoing healing that is going on between my mother and I. And I know other mothers that it's an ongoing healing where it's happening.
I mean, that is so key. Gretchen, I'm going to have you go, and then I'm going to read what Dr. Sesay has to say about that.
So I want to go back to and your initial statement about surface level, because a lot of the young millennial women that I see, we talk about that, right? How their relationship with their mom is real surface. And so they talk about kind of just like day-to-day stuff, but don't go any deeper than that. And so I think that's why I'm so passionate about working with teen and tween girls and their moms and encouraging them to always have open conversations. I can't tell you how many times I tell them to journal with each other. And so if that looks like writing things down, texting each other, having special outings with each other, doing things at home with each other. And that could look like cleaning, it could look like cooking. Any unique time that you can identify with your daughter is going to be important, and she is going to remember. And I say that because I remember my mother is great, and I remember doing things with her. That stuff still rings true. And I know just how important that is to young girls. The young girls that I work with, they tell me all the time how they want to spend more time with their moms. And so some of the moms are pretty young, I would say 40s. And the young girls often complain like mom is too preoccupied, whether or not she is too involved in her own life, on her cell phone, and they don't have time for them. And so I try to encourage moms as nicely as I can to build the foundation so that they will feel comfortable with coming to you and to talking about whatever issues come up for them, because I know what it looks like if you don't. Because I've got the millennials who will come and who will sit and who will tell me I didn't have a relationship with my mom. And some of them have had to come to the realization that their mother does not have the skill set and is not willing to accept and take responsibility for how they contributed to the downfall in their relationship. And they're not really open to it. They become very defensive and say, well, I did the best that I could, and it's not my fault. I did everything that I could. And all the daughter wants you to do is just listen and just to talk. But some of them they do not have the capacity. And so some of the young ladies have had to say, like, I've come to the conclusion and I can accept that my mom is doing the best she can and I love her, but sometimes that looks like loving her from a distance, right? And setting clear boundaries because the relationship can be hurtful.
Yes, I think you hit on something really key right there, but let me back up a little bit to acknowledge some of these comments, and then you all remind me, we're going to start about when you don't have the capacity to free your daughter like Mama C was able to. But let's get some of these comments in. And Simone said, my fear of raising my girls was in regards to failing them as a mother. And I think as a mother, a lot of mothers can identify with that fear, right? About failing them. And she says, we don't want to see the ugly things. And so we don't reveal those things, almost as if we don't talk about it and just work around it, it never existed or it never will exist. And we can't go about it that way, right? And so this is another comment, and I want somebody to address this, because she says, because if we own that, that means that we failed.
Mm-hmm. And it's not about failing, though. It's not, to me, it's not about failing. Being able to own up to something, it's not about you failing. It's not.
But as a mother, you feel like you fail because it sometimes overrides all the good that you've done. You know, it's like a kid who gets straight A's and 1 B, and you focus on that B. Right? So it kind of overshadows all the good that you've done. And like she said, that's your perception.
Well, that's the power of there being reconciliation with your own parenting and how you were parented, right? So
absolutely,
we have that as parents, and I'm saying we because I have a child as well, right? We have that because we may feel like there were areas that we were failed as a child. And so this is where the reconciliation comes in, and that intergenerational piece comes in, because if we understand that parenting and life in general is a process, right? We always want like the answer to just be, this is, you go to Harvard and this is what this means. And it's like, no, that's not what that means. It just means that you went to Harvard. That's it. And you can change and do other things, and that's okay. It's life. And so that's what I would say about that. There's still some reconciliation pieces in how you were parented and coming to that.
Absolutely. And I know Manisha has something to say, and Dr. Suzette sent in some comments about this as well.
Well, I just think that is also where the daughter also takes some responsibility in acknowledging that a mother sharing her truth and admitting that it is a risk. Otherwise, you wouldn't be at that point where the reconciliation was necessary. But even with Beth and her mom, once mom she almost got defensive. And then Beth was like, but you made me a great woman because you were so strong. You taught me how to be this great woman. And her feeling like she had no heir didn't take away from the good things that her mom and the great traits and the qualities that Beth was able to acknowledge that she carried. She wasn't blaming her for anything, but she just needed her mom, because there was no communication, to acknowledge that this is the effect that you also had on me, but you still did wonderful things. You're still a great woman. However, with the good comes some bad, and they're not mutually exclusive, that you can have both, but I just need you to acknowledge both so that I can also be okay.
Wow, I think that's really a good point, and it's hard for us as mothers sometimes to hold both truths, right? So Dr. Suzette says, I'm going back a little bit. She says, I think sometimes older moms don't have the skill set to not only parent, but to also nurture and nourish their spirits. One thing that newer moms can do is open up this door for dialogue with their moms. It also will take open-mindedness to understand where mothers are coming from and not to bash them. I think that is so key. It's not about bashing mothers, but also, like Manisha said, to say you were this and this, right? And so not to bash them where they believe they should do for their daughters, and invite moms to spend more time to look at what they wish they had done differently. That is such a graceful way of doing it, inviting them to say, what could I have done differently? What do I wish I had done differently, right? And she also said, which is key, this is so key. This is something my mom and I had to work out. What provided healing was her acknowledgement that her parenting was harsh, and that whereas that might work for others, my spirit was not accepting of that. So knowing who your kids are and what kind of mother your kid need is really, really important. Oh my goodness, I love this. And I think about that because for those of you who don't know, I started this process with my daughter probably a little over a year ago to say, and I started out with a question as, what do you wish you knew when you were 13? Because I was writing my chapter on what I wish I knew when I was 13. And I think when she shared, it was like, oh my gosh, those are some of the same things I wish I knew. And I was trying so hard to spare her from having those feelings without even ever talking to her about that. And fast forward months later, when I was going through the process with my own mother, like Dr. Suzay mentioned, she wasn't able to acknowledge that because her remarks to me was, that's what you thought happened. That, you know, but that didn't take away from the great provider that she was and how she had high expectations from me. That didn't take away from that. It didn't take away from the kind-hearted person that she cultivated. But in that moment, as an older parent, it was hard for her to realize that, yes, this happened and also this, right? So as we go forward, I want you to talk to different segments of mothers. Like Gretchen just spoke to like the millenniums, but I want you to talk to those mothers out there who are struggling with this. They want a deeper relationship with their daughters, and they don't necessarily know how to do it. So we have the older mom who's like, you know what, I've sacrificed my whole life for you. You just need to be grateful. And you bringing this up is being ungrateful, right? And then I want you to talk to the mom who is, I want to do this, but I don't know how to do it, right? And then the mom, the person who's thinking about becoming a mom, what are some of the things that you can put in place before you bring a daughter into this world? So I'm gonna go around the panel, and you all give some nuggets to those mothers out there. And it's up to you which segment you want to speak to. And I might have forgotten some segments. So let's start with, I want to say Dr. Margaret. Let's start with Margaret.
That's the hope. So y'all pray for me. That's the hope. So I would like to speak to, I guess I'm a lieu of that particular mother. Hopefully she's a mix of all that. One who's preparing to be, and I feel like even in preparation, you become. And I would just say, don't be ashamed of your own story. Story is so vital to the beauty and the continuation of our community, and even in the community of women and how we are. If you're speaking to your daughters, speaking to your children, yes, but speaking to your daughters, do not be ashamed of your story. Bring all of your parts in, so that your daughter can see the beauty of how you have become. What is the beauty of your human existence because of the pain and the glory? Bring your entire story in so that it won't be shadow boxing for your children, because you haven't decided to talk to those pieces that you didn't want to deal with. I don't think it's any shame for mothers who are single mothers or mothers who are married, or if you were abused, or what you did in your past and now you become who you are, or what happened to you in your past. I would absolutely invite those mothers to speak to all of who they are, and invite their children to see all of who they are, when they feel their children are ready for those pieces. But don't leave those pieces out, because I know for me, that is the piece of my mother that I wish I could see even today, because I recognize how smart she is. I recognize her brilliance. I recognize her tenacity for business. But there are pieces now that she's 60 and I'm almost 40 that I'm beginning to meet that I wish I had met in my teens and in my 20s, because it's helping me understand myself.
Wow, that's pretty powerful. And just before the next person speaks, Simone says, begin healing your wounds so that you don't end up bleeding all over your child. And also, and talk to your children about your wounds and be transparent. Thank you for that. That's good stuff. Okay, Cecile, who do you want to speak to, and what do you want to tell them?
Sorry, I had to unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I guess I agree with everything that was already said, quite frankly. I think that it's a constant work of unraveling yourself and just being aware of the fact that you're evolving and that it's okay to be in an evolving space, right? Because we think that we're going, there's going to be some level of perfection that we're going to achieve, but no, you're going to always be finding different pieces of yourself that you are discovering. But certainly before you have a child, just like what you did and with your daughter, what do I wish I would have known at this time? What do I know about myself as a child? Asking people, what was I like when I was 5 years old or 6 years old? Am I still that kind of person, or have I changed? If I did change, why did I change? How did I change, etc. So those things are critical to, I think, to have an understanding of yourself. As a mother in the process, just being kind to yourself, taking the time. I just said to my daughter today, just a full transparency, I said, I'm going to stop raising my voice so much because it's not healthy to do that. Because I know that I do it too much, because I know that I heard it a lot, right? And so I'm very aware of it. I'm very clear. And so even just bringing that to her, and she's looking at me like, yeah, right, Mom. But I think that is very powerful to even just say to them, so that they know that you are in process, and that, it's okay for them to also be in process, because nobody is perfect. And that's what I would say, that's what I would say, to be aware of your evolution and be okay with it.
Yes. Dr. Susay.
Okay, I'm gonna try to talk. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So Dr. Shefali has this really important work that she has written on in terms of raising children. And I think as mothers, we have to sort of step back from what the age-old traditions have been in terms of raising kids, to understanding that we are facilitators of our kids' experience, and we're not necessarily owners of their experience or of them. And that sort of changes the way that we approach parenting them. If we can see that, we facilitate their growth. We teach them by how we live. We teach them by what we tell them as well, but we teach them by how we treat them. And we understand that we're old humans, but they are young humans as well, on a path, living, equipped with emotional GPS and wisdom, just like we are. We just might have lived a little bit longer, and we can speak more to the things that they have not experienced, but they too bring something to the table in terms of our relationship. And so being able to honor them as little humans will help the dynamic that we can develop with them. So you don't have to know everything. You don't have to be the guru on life. Yeah, you can share what you learn, but then you can also be open to what they have to say and what they see.
Wow, I think that's pretty powerful. And if we pay attention and tune in, they will lead us into what it takes to cultivate that productive adult. I just learning that, you also. It's coming. All right, Renetta.
So I'm not a parent, but I would like to speak to parents. I work with adults, again, in substance abuse treatment, and a lot of the roots of their issues, my issues, our issues, is that we love our parents, we love our mothers, but we have these desires to just have our moms see us, and having being able to have an honest and open conversation with our mothers is really healing. It's not for us to say you did this wrong or you did that right. It's just, can you hear me? Can you see me? Can you accept me? So I would say to moms that if your children come to you and they want to have a conversation with you, be open to it, because that could be the bridge to the gap that is between you two. Just hearing your children out, and just knowing that they're not there to say you got it all wrong, and being able to say to your children that there were some things that you didn't get all right. It goes a long way, because it just shows your humanness, And it shows that, you know, it teaches them they don't have to be perfect. You know, if you can admit you weren't perfect, and that you could have done some things differently or better, I don't know. It just really will free your children to live in that space of just being human.
Wow. Thank you. That's pretty powerful. Manisha and then Gretchen.
I think, well, I'm not a mother of my own, but a mother of many as far as my class, my students. So I guess I'll speak to the mother, the one who's preparing for motherhood or with young children. I would think a lot of times we try to do the complete opposite of what our parents did if we're left feeling any kind of neglect or avoidance from them. But I think it's important not to just completely go off the grid, but to really self-reflect and like dissect the relationship and what the parents were doing in order to find the good and accept it with the bad. So take from the good and then advance and change and develop the things that did not work for you when you were a child so that you're able to have a greater impact on your child. But you don't want to only see the bad and then throw away some of the good that did make you the great person that you are as well as an adult. But self-reflection is very key before the process, before you bring children, but also even if you have children already, um in order to grow and have forgiveness in your relationship, you have to start with yourself. Otherwise you're not going to be ready, whether you are the daughter or the mother. You have to start with yourself, and to be ready to hear what the other person's going to say and to confess whatever you need to confess yourself. So self-reflection and take the good with the bad, and to make it work.
Wow. I think that's pretty powerful. And I just want to say, Manisha, because of the grace that you've extended to me, that has made the process a lot easier for me, because now I don't have to be defensive about everything. I can hear you say, Mom, no, you didn't do that. And without saying, what? You know, I can say, okay, I didn't. I could have done that differently. So thank you for the grace that you've offered and extended to me in that healing process. And Gretchen.
Yeah, so I want to speak to the moms of tween and teen girls, because oftentimes my tween and teen girls will make in anger and or frustration and say, I hate you. And so my message to the moms is that they do not hate you. They love you and they need your guidance. I need you to just take the time to spend with them and talk to them like they're your kid and they want a relationship with you. And teens really will talk and open up if you give them the opportunity. And sometimes it really is just listening and having like a no judgment zone time, right? Where they can just talk and just be open and be receptive and don't always go into the fix me mode or you shouldn't do that or you shouldn't do this. Allow them to grow and develop into their own unique person because they are, and they need you, they need your guidance, and they don't hate you, because a lot of moms feel like their teen and tween daughters hate them because they say that, but they all say that, right? I remember saying it, I hate you, but you say it in anger. So that's my message to the moms, is that allow them to develop and grow and give them the time and the nourishing that they need.
That's pretty awesome. And Dr. Dana says, yes, everyone plays a part in the mother-daughter relationship. I mean, we all play a part, and even our ancestors and those who have gone on before for generations still play a part in the mother-daughter relationship. Well, I'm just really excited about this discussion that we've had, and I appreciate your time and I appreciate your candor in sharing about this, because it's not a really popular discussion to have. But when I think about the show, This Is Us, and I think about how Beth was set on the path to explore her passion, and I think about what if Mom did not release her in that moment. And that fuels the work that I do with myself and with my clients. What if I don't release my daughter in that moment? Think about the hopes and the dreams that I could stifle. And so our last thing for this show is we're going to just go around and give one last piece of aha or one last piece of advice to our audience. And let me say to our audience, thank you for hanging in there with us. And if you're still watching, please, or if you're joining us by replay, please share this out, because this is a very, very good conversation and good information that can inspire healing. Because the thing about it is, if the mother-daughter relationship, if that's not right, it affects so many other relationships. So we're going to wrap around one more time, and we're going to start with Dr. Susay first.
Okay. I just want to speak to all moms. Like, you have a really, really powerful job. You have a powerful role. You are a powerful presence in the world. And so sometimes it's going to be difficult. You're not going to be appreciated. You're going to feel hated. But just keep the faith and have conversations with other moms, because I think a lot of us miss that we don't understand how difficult the job is because we don't share with each other about our journey. So you're loved, you're needed, and keep going.
That's awesome. Cecile?
I think the thing that I heard several times and it's something that I've been having a lot of conversation with women about, is that it's okay as a mom and a woman, you can still be powerful and effective and be very feminine in your approach to parenting. And that's my aha, continuing from my previous, ahas from this past week. You don't have to be hard to be effective. And that's my.
Wow, that's good stuff. Gretchen?
So my message to moms is that it's okay to ask for help. You don't have to go through the journey alone. There's help out there. And sometimes just reach out to your village, because there's other moms who might be experiencing some of the same hurdles that you are. So that might look like connecting with other moms. It might look like getting connected with a local clinician in your area, whatever you need to do, because that relationship is important. These young ladies will be adults. And so that your job is really, really, really important. You are laying the foundation.
Wow, that's good stuff. Monisha?
I think in all of this self-discovery and forgiveness, just remembering or asking yourself, what do I lose by giving myself in this relationship or in this forgiveness? What could I lose? What could I gain? Because I think that for some, you would lose the whole relationship if you don't give yourself to the dialogue, but you would gain so much more. Some people might think they would lose their image, but you actually gain more in the transparency with your daughter or with your mother. So just being in the moment, not trying to answer the questions for the other person before they're asked. Just be present in the whole process.
Wow, that's good stuff. I'm gonna get to see my grandbabies, y'all. That's when we do this work. It's legacy building. All right, Renetta.
Wow, so much powerful stuff tonight. So the whole time I was just reflecting on the show and reflecting on everybody's comments about how this is generational. And I kept thinking about the saying that we've all seen this. It may have run in my family, but this is where it runs out. And the way that it stops, the way that we can, as moms or as mothers and daughters, break that generational pattern of strained relationships is by being courageous and having those intimate and vulnerable conversations, just listening to each other and really hearing each other, and not being afraid of that, because It's so much love between mothers and daughters, and that fear factor puts a strain on it. But if we have those conversations, I believe it can go a long way.
I think you're right on. And Margaret, let's pull up the rear.
So my last comments are, be vulnerable. Like, vulnerability isn't bad. And I think generationally we have learned that if I say too much, I will look bad in this particular person's face, and our children. But I encourage mothers and daughters to be vulnerable. Like Renetta, I don't have any children, and so I can speak to the side of being a daughter. But I will say the vulnerability that now is coming is something that is beautiful and is to be embraced. And so in that vulnerability, have self-compassion, be mindful, and also be fair to yourself. I enjoyed what was said about, I now tell myself I don't have to be so loud, for the mother who said that, but just be fair, and acknowledge what you did do and what you did not do, and talk it out. So I think that grows, and it causes a healing and a transformation that is far beyond. And just like you said, Miss Ann, it absolutely is legacy building, so that we teach our next generations that vulnerability isn't bad, but it shows who we are and our strengths. And it shows who we are and where we need to lean, and where we need to lend a hand, and where we need to grab a hand and pull up, and how to walk. I mean, it's literally just walking in Sankofa. Like, you pull back what you need to pull forward and hold on to those things that cause healing and growth continually. So that's my suggestions to mothers, daughters, and all those who are listening tonight to this powerful conversation.
Excellent. Ladies, thank you so much for being a part of this panel. This has been such good, rich information, and I invite you all to drop in the comment section and address some of those questions or comments that has been made. Make sure you drop your contact information in the comment section as well, so people can find you. And again, I'm just so grateful for you being a part of this dialogue. It won't be the last one. We're gonna have more conversations around this, because it's needed. It's not popular, but it's needed for the healing of our relationship, for the healing of, for just having healthy relationships. And I'm so grateful again for you being here. Thank you all for joining, and thank you for watching. Make sure you like and share out this information so we can spread healing and spread hope. God bless you all, and have a good night.
Thanks. Bye, Ann. Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much.
You
Bye,
too.
ladies.
Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
guys.
Everyone.